Elena Martinez felt 17 pairs of alien eyes follow her as she descended the central platform. The council chamber's perfect acoustics carried every whisper of doubt to her ears. 6 standard months of watching the Galactic Council's finest minds fail had tested her patience beyond measure. Representative Martinez called Torlath, the Vosic ambassador, his upper appendages twitching with what humans had learned was their equivalent of condescension. Surely you understand the junction's complexity exceeds current human technological capabilities by several evolutionary leaps. Elena paused mid-step, but didn't turn. Perhaps that's exactly the problem, Ambassador. You've all been leaping while we've been walking. Behind her, the Trisolar representative's crystalline form vibrated with the harmonic patterns of amusement. The sound grated against Elena's already frayed nerves. Council Chair Zelnorath raised a graceful limb for silence. As the oldest member of the oldest species in the Council, even this small gesture commanded immediate respect. The Council acknowledges humanity's offer with appropriate appreciation. However, given the critical nature of the Carolan Junction to 17 civilizations, we must express reasonable concern about entrusting its repair to your species, which achieved faster-than-light travel merely 73 years ago. Elena finally turned, facing the semicircle of the most advanced beings in the known galaxy. Most couldn't even be bothered to inhabit physical forms for council meetings, appearing instead as shimmering holograms or energy signatures. All had evolved or engineered themselves toward their idea of perfection over thousands or millions of years. With respect, Chair Zelnorath, Elena said, choosing her words carefully, perhaps that's precisely why we might succeed where you've all failed. You've spent millennia becoming increasingly specialized, increasingly perfect at being exactly what you are. Humans are imperfect generalists. We're still figuring out what we are. The Helix ambassador's avatar flickered with mathematical patterns, indicating skepticism. And this is advantageous how, precisely? Elena allowed herself a small smile. Because we haven't yet learned what's impossible. She accessed her neural interface, a crude device by council standards, and projected the data her team had compiled. 3-dimensional models of the junction appeared above the chamber floor, highlighting decay patterns no other species had correlated. Your civilizations build beautiful systems based on elegant theories, she continued. But when those theories fail, you struggle to abandon them. Humans are comfortable with being wrong. We've had much more practice at it than any of you. The chamber erupted in multilingual chatter, some species communicating in light patterns or gravitic pulses that human translation software still struggled to interpret accurately. You have 2 standard weeks, Chair Zelnorath finally declared, silencing the chamber. After which, if no progress is demonstrated, the Council will implement the Trisolar containment proposal, abandoning the junction entirely. Elena nodded, knowing what that meant. 17 worlds directly connected to the junction would face economic collapse. Billions would suffer. We'll depart immediately, she said, already calculating how many ships she could requisition on short notice. And Chair Zelnorath? We'll need complete access to all previous repair attempts, including the failed ones. Especially the failed ones, she added, already walking toward the exit. Behind her, the Council resumed its endless debate, but now with a new topic. What to do when the humans inevitably failed too? Elena allowed herself a grim smile as the chamber doors sealed behind her. They had no idea what humans could accomplish when everyone else had given up. Chief Engineer Adibeo studied the holographic model of the Carolan Junction as it rotated above the makeshift command center. His team had converted a decommissioned cargo bay into their headquarters, much to the visible discomfort of the Council observers. The aliens preferred their sterile, algorithm-optimized environments. Dr. Chen, what do you make of these resonance patterns? Adebayo asked, gesturing to a pulsing section of the model where energy fluctuations had grown increasingly erratic. Dr. Mei Chen squinted at the display, then did something that made the observing Helix ambassador's light patterns flash in what humans had learned indicated alarm. She walked up and touched the hologram, physically manipulating the display with her hands rather than issuing verbal commands. "The problem isn't in the junction's infrastructure," she muttered, expanding a cross-section with her fingers. "It's more fundamental. The Council's equations assume hyperspace behaves uniformly across all reference frames." Lieutenant Okafor looked up from his physical notebook, an object that had fascinated the Council representatives since their arrival. "Does it not?" "No more than ocean currents behave uniformly," Chen replied. "They've been treating hyperspace like a perfectly engineered system rather than a natural phenomenon with inherent chaos. That's why their repairs keep failing." The Mirari observer stepped forward, his insectoid body clicking with agitation. "Hyperspace functions according to established quantum principles," he stated, mandibles flexing. 17 species have confirmed this through millennia of study. Adebayo smiled politely. "With respect, Ambassador, when 17 doctors agree on a diagnosis, but the patient keeps getting worse, perhaps it's time for a new consultation." He turned to the team assembled in the cargo bay, 12 humans with specialties ranging from theoretical physics to mechanical engineering, none of them the most advanced experts Earth had to offer, but all selected for their adaptive thinking. "The Council has been trying to fix what they think is broken," Adebayo continued. "I think we need to understand what's actually happening first." Dr. Rodriguez, their quantum specialist, looked up from her calculations. "The junction isn't malfunctioning," she said slowly. "It's evolving." The statement caused immediate reaction among the Council observers. The Trisolar representative's crystalline form vibrated in patterns that the translation software interpreted as incredulous laughter. "Hyperspace constructs don't evolve," the Vosik scientific advisor stated flatly. "They are static engineering achievements." "Nothing in the universe is static," Rodriguez countered, pointing to her handwritten equations. "Look at these energy signatures. They're not random decay. They are self-organizing into new patterns." Adebayo studied the data, then nodded to Wei, their systems engineer. "Prepare the scout vessels. We need direct observations, not sensor readings. You intend to physically enter the junction." The Helix ambassador's avatar flickered with mathematical patterns indicating alarm. "Our most advanced drones were destroyed within minutes." "Then we'll just have to be smarter than your drones," Adebayo replied, already pulling on his environment suit. As the human team prepared for manual inspection, the Council representatives exchanged concerned glances. The Mirari observer activated his neural link to the Council. "The humans are attempting a direct approach," he reported. "They're manually inspecting junction segments or simulations deemed too unstable for investigation." The response came immediately. "Continue observation. Their failure will validate our containment strategy." The Mirari clicked in acknowledgement, but found himself strangely reluctant to share the directive with the humans. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, he found himself hoping, against all logical probability, that the primitive newcomers might prove the Council wrong. The observation deck fell silent as communications with the 3 human vessels disappeared into static. The Caroline Junction's energy storm had intensified without warning, swallowing the small ships and swirls of hyperspace distortion. A regrettable loss, the Vosic ambassador noted, his appendages arranged in the formal position of respectful acknowledgement. They showed admirable, if misguided, courage. The Mirari observer clicked his mandibles softly. "Shall I prepare the standard diplomatic condolences for transmission to Earth?" Before anyone could respond, a burst of garbled audio cut through the static on the main channel. The council representatives leaned forward collectively as the communications officer worked to enhance the signal. "Secondary thrusters gone. Manual override. Junction node 7. Need extraction at Rodriguez. Stop bleeding from Y calculating." The fragmented transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun. They survived. The Trisolar representative's crystalline form vibrated in disbelief. The energy readings in that sector exceeded all biological tolerance parameters. The communications panel chimed again. A weak emergency beacon had activated from within the storm zone. A primitive signal compared to Council standards, but remarkably effective at penetrating the hyperspace interference. 2 hours later, the observation deck doors slid open. Engineer Wei limped through, supported by a makeshift crutch fashioned from what appeared to be pieces of his own vessel's internal structure. Behind him, Rodriguez followed, her environment suit patched with material never designed for that purpose, a makeshift pressure seal visibly holding around her left thigh. The council representatives stared in stunned silence. "Sorry about the ships," Wei said, his voice hoarse. "Couldn't save them, but we got something better." He placed a data core on the central console. Direct readings from inside the storm. Not sensor data, actual physical samples. The Vosic scientific advisor approached cautiously, examining the crude device. "How did you survive the radiation surge?" Our models indicated complete molecular disruption was inevitable. Rodriguez lowered herself carefully into a seat, wincing. "We noticed the junction's energy signature matched a pattern our scientists recorded during Earth's Tunguska event in 1908. Once we recognized that, we knew how to ride it out." The Tunguska event. The Helix ambassador's avatar flickered with confusion patterns. Space object hit Earth's atmosphere. Massive explosion. No impact crater. Wei explained, accepting a medical patch from one of the human support staff. Debate about it for centuries. Point is, the signature matches. The junction isn't breaking down randomly. It's releasing energy in specific patterns. The head council scientist interfaced with the data core, its contents projecting across the observation deck's displays. As the information resolved into coherent patterns, a ripple of communication passed through the alien observers, the equivalent of shocked whispers. "This can't be correct," the Trisolar representative stated. "These readings suggest the junction is reconfiguring itself." Rodriguez finished. "Like I said, it's not breaking down. It's evolving into something new. Your repair attempts have been fighting against a natural metamorphosis." Wei nodded, his expression grave despite their breakthrough. "The good news is we can work with this process instead of against it. The bad news?" He pointed to the displays showing the junction's accelerating transformation. "We've got maybe 72 hours before it completes its evolution. If we don't adapt our approach by then, the junction won't just be unusable. It'll collapse completely." The Mirari observer's compound eyes reflected the data displays as he transmitted an emergency update to the Council. For the first time in recorded history, the Council faced a phenomenon that defied their understanding, and their only hope lay with the species they had dismissed as cosmic children. "That's the stupidest idea I've heard today, and that's saying something," Dr. Chen declared, pointing accusingly at Rodriguez's diagram. The improvised command center buzzed with activity as the human team worked through their 14th consecutive hour. The Trisolar representative's crystalline form vibrated with distress patterns. Such direct confrontation would trigger immediate diplomatic sanctions among Council species. Rodriguez didn't even look up from her calculations. Got a better one? Because I'm all ears. Actually, yes. Chen erased part of the whiteboard, another primitive tool that fascinated the observers, and sketched a new configuration. If we treat the junction as a living system rather than a machine, we could introduce a catalyst here instead of a suppressor. Adebayo studied both proposals, sipping from his 5th cup of coffee. The Council observers had been quietly documenting the humans' reliance on the stimulant, theorizing it might explain their erratic behavior. Neither will work independently, he finally said. But what if we combine them? The two scientists stared at the board, then at each other, then burst into simultaneous laughter. That's completely insane, Chen grinned. The resonance patterns wooled. Exactly. Rodriguez finished her thought. They'd create a third-order effect that might actually stabilize the transformation. The Helix ambassador's avatar flickered with confusion patterns. You are proposing to merge two incompatible approaches. Our simulations indicate a 98.7% probability of catastrophic failure. Your simulations are based on outdated models, Adebayo replied, already dispatching orders to the rest of the team. We're working with what's actually happening, not what should be happening according to theory. The ambassador's avatar pulsed with what the translation software interpreted as indignation. The Council's hyperspace theories have been refined over 12,000 years. Dr. Yoshida looked up from her workstation with a tired smile. With respect, Ambassador, that might be the problem. You've spent millennia refining theories that worked perfectly for stable junctions. But this junction isn't stable anymore. It's changing. The universe doesn't care about elegant solutions or perfect theories. It only cares about what works. As the humans mobilized to implement their hybrid approach, the Mirari observer approached Adebayo privately. Your work methods defy standard protocols, the insectoid diplomat noted, mandibles clicking softly. Among Council species, direct contradiction of a superior's hypothesis would trigger automatic removal from a project. Adebayo chuckled. Good thing we don't work that way. He paused, considering how to explain. Humans learned that good ideas can come from anywhere. Our greatest breakthroughs often started with someone saying, "That can't possibly work," or "You're completely wrong." And this produces better outcomes. The Mirari's compound eyes reflected genuine curiosity. Not always, but it gives us more options. Adebayo gestured toward the bustling team. Every human in this room has a different perspective, a different history, a different way of thinking. When we combine those differences, we see solutions no individual could discover alone. The Mirari observed silently as the humans continued their chaotic but purposeful activity. In his 17 decades of diplomatic service, he had witnessed the precisely choreographed problem-solving approaches of countless advanced civilizations. None had ever resembled this messy, confrontational, strangely effective human method. Before he could formulate an appropriate response, alarms blared throughout the station. On the main display, the junction's energy readings spiked dramatically. "It's accelerating," Wei announced, his voice steady despite the dire readings. "New estimate. We have less than 36 hours before complete metamorphosis." Adebayo nodded grimly. "Then we'd better get moving. Time for theory is over. We implement now. The emergency evacuation order flashed across every screen in the observation station. Commander Rodriguez stood motionless before the central display, watching as the junction's quantum substrate continued its accelerated unraveling. All personnel are ordered to evacuation points immediately. The automated system announced in 17 languages. Junction collapse imminent. This is not a drill. The council representatives were already departing, their vessels preparing for immediate withdrawal to safe distances. Only the Mirari observer lingered, his compound eyes fixed on Rodriguez. "Your team must evacuate now, Commander," he clicked softly. The Council's final models give less than 4 hours before catastrophic collapse. No possibility of stabilization remains. Rodriguez turned to face the alien diplomat. "With respect, Ambassador, we're not leaving." Across the command center, the human team continued working with practiced urgency. No one paused to gather personal belongings or move toward the escaped shuttles. "This is not a matter of courage, Commander," the Mirari insisted, mandibles flexing with genuine concern. "The physics are absolute. The junction cannot be saved." "Maybe not," Rodriguez acknowledged, "but we can guide its transformation instead of fighting it." She gestured toward Dr. Chen's latest simulations. "We've identified nodes where targeted energy pulses could help channel the metamorphosis. If we can stabilize even 3 of the 7 critical points, the junction might survive in altered form." The Mirari's translator struggled to find equivalents for the emotional harmonics in his response. "The survival probability is negligible." 17%. Wei confirmed from his station, not looking up from his calculations. "Not great odds, but we faced worse." The Mirari's antennae twitched in disbelief. "You would risk certain death for a 17% chance of success. For a junction your species barely utilizes." Rodriguez's expression softened. "Ambassador, do you know why humans joined the Galactic Council?" "To access advanced technologies and trade routes," the Mirari replied promptly. "Standard motivations for emerging species." "No," Rodriguez shook her head. "We joined because we believe in building something larger than ourselves. This junction doesn't just connect spatial coordinates, it connects civilizations, cultures, lives." She gestured to her team. "Every human here understands what 17 advanced species apparently forgot. When something matters to others, sometimes you step up, even when it costs you." The Mirari stood silent, translation software failing to capture concepts his language had no words for. The station shuddered as another energy wave rippled through the junction. Warning klaxons intensified. "Last shuttle departs in 7 minutes, the system announced. "You should go, Ambassador," Rodriguez said gently. "There's no reason for you to share our risk." The Mirari's compound eyes reflected the emergency lights as he accessed his neural link to the Council. After a brief communication, he straightened to his full height. "I will remain to observe," he stated formally. "The Council requires complete documentation." Rodriguez nodded, knowing the diplomatic fiction for what it was, the first Council representative to choose uncertain risk over certain safety. "Wei, Chen, Yoshida, final preparations," she ordered, turning back to her team. "Aid Veo, prep the emergency beacons. If this works, I want the Council to know exactly how we did it." She paused, adding with a grim smile, "And if it doesn't, I want them to learn from our mistakes." As the evacuation countdown continued, the human team moved with focused determination, each taking position at their stations. Outside, the last Council vessels disappeared into the safety of deep space, leaving only a single Mirari shuttle alongside the human craft. Rodriguez took a deep breath and activated the ship-wide communication system. "This is Commander Rodriguez. We are now implementing Operation Metamorphosis. Whatever happens next, it's been an honor." The junction blazed with energy cascades as the human team deployed to their positions. Each specialist manned a control node at critical failure points throughout the massive structure, implementing coordinated adjustments no automation could handle under such chaotic conditions. "Chen, status report." Rodriguez's voice crackled through the emergency comm system. Engineer Chen's response came through broken by static. "Primary stabilizers offline. Switching to manual calibration." Her environment suit sensors flashed warning indicators as radiation levels in her section climbed steadily. The modified shield she'd jerry-rigged would fail within hours, but she needed only minutes to complete her task. Junction core approaching critical phase shift. Physicist Patel reported from his station. The observation room's computers had crashed completely, forcing him to calculate quantum variances manually on a physical notepad. Wave patterns suggest transformation accelerating. The Mirari observer monitored the human's life signs with growing concern. Heart rates, adrenaline levels, core temperatures, all approached or exceeded what Council medical databases listed as sustainable limits. How are they still functioning? He wondered aloud, forgetting his translator was active. Adebayo glanced up from his console with a tight smile. "Humans evolved as persistence predators, Ambassador. Before we built tools, we chased prey until they collapse for exhaustion. We're not the strongest species, but we can keep going when others can't." On the main display, 3 of the 7 critical junction nodes showed signs of stabilization under the human team's efforts. Not enough yet, but progress where 17 advanced civilizations had predicted only inevitable failure. "Taurus, reroute emergency power to Node 5, Rodriguez ordered, her voice steady despite the alarms blaring throughout her section. "Can't do it remotely," came the response. "Junction's transformation is disrupting automated systems. Need to manually adjust the power relays. That section is experiencing temporal distortion. The Mirari warned, mandibles clicking rapidly. Exposure exceeds survivable parameters." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Noted, Ambassador." She switched channels. "Wei, your status." "Ready to implement pulse sequence at Node 2, Wei replied. The engineer had wedged himself into a maintenance conduit never designed for biological entities, positioning equipment by hand that should have been handled by drones. "Execute on my mark," Rodriguez confirmed. She took a deep breath, checking the final calculations. Everything depended on precise timing across all nodes simultaneously. 3, 2, 1. Mark. Across the junction, the human team activated their respective systems. Energy surged through the massive structure as 7 separate pulses converged, guiding rather than resisting the junction's transformation. The observation station shuddered violently. Warning systems screamed as structural integrity reached critical limits. "Is it working?" the Mirari asked, his compound eyes struggling to interpret the chaotic data streams. "Too soon to tell," Adebayo replied, fingers dancing across emergency controls. "But we're still here, which is better than expected." The main display flickered, then stabilized, showing something unprecedented. The junction's energy patterns were self-organizing into new configurations, following channels the humans had painstakingly established. "Node 3 stabilized," Chen reported, her voice weakening. "Shield integrity at 12%. "Node 5 transitioning," Taurus confirmed. "But I'm having trouble maintaining position." The temporal distortions were affecting her perception, stretching seconds into minutes. "Hold on," Rodriguez encouraged. "Just a little longer." The Mirari observer watched in astonishment as human life signs continued functioning despite conditions that should have rendered them unconscious or worse. Their bodies were failing, that was clear from the medical data, but their will pushed them beyond physiological limits. "Junction resonance approaching harmony," Pytel announced suddenly. "The transformation it's stabilizing." A new alarm sounded, not for the junction, but for the human team. "Life support critical in sections 3 and 5, Prevail reported grimly. "We need to extract Chen and Torres now." Rodriguez nodded. "Initiate emergency retrieval. All personnel fall back to rendezvous points." She paused, watching as the junction's new configuration solidified on the displays. "We've done our part. Now let's see what it becomes." The Council fleet returned cautiously, scanning the Caroline Junction from a safe distance. Where they expected to find debris and spatial distortion, they instead discovered something unprecedented. A stable hyperspace nexus, subtly altered but functional, pulsing with new energy patterns. "Impossible," the Vosic scientific advisor declared, appendages twitching rapidly as he processed the sensor data. The junction should have collapsed completely. The Trisolar representative's crystalline form vibrated with calculation harmonics. Statistical analysis confirms zero probability of successful stabilization. And yet, on the observation station's primary deck, the returning Council representatives found a scene unlike anything in standard post-crisis protocols. The surviving human team had gathered in what they'd converted to a makeshift celebration area. Someone had reprogrammed food synthesizers to approximate Earth beverages, and improvised music played from jury-rigged communication systems. Dr. Chen sat with her leg elevated, medical nanites working to repair radiation damage. Engineer Torres lay unconscious but stable in a medical pod, temporal distortion effects slowly reversing. The rest of the team showed various injuries, exhaustion, and signs of cellular stress, yet their mood appeared inexplicably positive. "You're celebrating." The Helix ambassador's avatar flickered with confusion patterns. Proper post-crisis procedure requires immediate documentation and analysis of methodologies. Rodriguez gestured to a data core on a nearby console. "All there, Ambassador. Complete records of everything we tried. What worked, what didn't. But yes, we're celebrating first, because we're alive and the junction survived." The Council chair approached, moving with the formal grace of his ancient species. The Council acknowledges humanity's unexpected achievement. His carefully chosen words barely concealed his astonishment. "Our preliminary analysis indicates the junction as not merely being repaired, but transformed into a more efficient configuration." "Not our doing," Adebayo explained, raising his improvised beverage in a toast. "We just helped it along instead of fighting against it. The junction knew what it wanted to become." "Objects do not possess desires," the Trisolar representative objected. Wei shrugged, wincing as the motion aggravated his injuries. "Maybe not in your understanding of physics, but apparently the universe had other ideas." The Mirari observer, who had remained with the humans throughout the crisis, stepped forward. "The Council requests explanation of your methodology. How did your species succeed where 17 advanced civilizations determined success impossible?" Rodriguez exchanged glances with her team, then smiled tiredly. "We approached it differently. Your civilizations built theories first, then tried to make reality conform to them. Humans observe reality first, then build theories to match." A primitive approach, the Vosic noted, though his tone lacked its former dismissiveness. "Sometimes primitive works," Rodriguez replied simply. As the council representatives continued their inspection, urgent communications flowed between 17 homeworlds. Analysis teams studied the human methods with mixtures of fascination and concern. Technical experts examined the junction's new configuration, finding solutions that worked despite violating standard protocols. The Helix Confederation, long known for their technological superiority, quietly approached Martinez about potential exchange programs. The Vosik, historically opposed to human involvement in advanced projects, now advocated for human inclusion in their research initiatives. In a private communication chamber, the council chair consulted with his species' eldest members. "The humans have demonstrated unexpected capabilities," he admitted reluctantly. The response came after thoughtful consideration. "Perhaps it is time to re-evaluate our understanding of advancement. The cosmic children have shown us something we had forgotten." Outside, the transformed junction pulsed with new energy patterns, connecting civilizations in ways no one had anticipated, except perhaps the humans who believed impossible things might simply be problems waiting for a new perspective. The Galactic Council's Centennial Policy Summit filled the Grand Chamber with representatives from all 17 major species. Elegant holograms, shimmering energy patterns, and physical forms arranged themselves according to protocols established millennia ago. 6 months had passed since the Caroline Junction incident, but its effects continue to ripple through galactic politics. Elena Martinez took her seat at the human delegation's platform, now positioned closer to the chamber's center than before, a subtle but significant change in status. The agenda displayed on floating screens around the chamber: stellar instability threatening the Cygnus sector, resource disputes between the Helix Confederation and Trisolar Collective, and new trade route negotiations. As the council chair called the session to order, Martinez noticed something unusual. The other delegations were watching the humans with a new expression in their various sensory organs, not the former dismissive tolerance, but something closer to genuine interest. The first topic concerned a cluster of unstable stars threatening 3 inhabited systems. The Council's stellar engineers presented their solution: a massive containment field requiring resources from 14 worlds and technological cooperation for at least 9 species. The presentation concluded to murmurs of approval. The solution was elegant, comprehensive, and entirely in line with Council traditions. Ambassador Kileth of the Trisolar Collective rose to voice the expected formal endorsement. Instead, the crystalline being vibrated in a pattern the translator rendered as thoughtful hesitation. "The proposal demonstrates our traditional mastery of complex systems," Kileth began. The chamber hummed with agreement. However, the crystalline form shifted, refracting light in patterns indicating uncertainty, a shocking display from a species renowned for their calculated precision. The chamber fell silent. "Perhaps," Kileth continued, "before we commit to implementation, we should invite the human perspective on this matter." 17 species paused as all attention turned to Martinez. The humans, barely established in interstellar travel, being asked to critique a plan developed by civilizations with millions of years of stellar engineering experience. Unprecedented. Martinez stood slowly, sensing the momentous shift this represented. 6 months ago, she had stormed out of this chamber, frustrated by the Council's dismissal. Now they waited for her words with genuine attention. "The containment field proposal is impressive," she began carefully, "but it treats the symptoms rather than the cause. These stars aren't merely decaying, they are communicating." Displays around the chamber flickered as she transferred data from her neural interface. Our astronomers noticed patterns in the stellar fluctuations similar to what we observed at the Caroline Junction. These aren't random instabilities. They are a system in transformation. The Council's scientists examined the human data with growing interest as Martinez continued. Instead of containing these stars, we propose working with their natural evolution. A minimal intervention here. She highlighted specific stellar coordinates, could guide the process toward a new equilibrium without requiring massive resource expenditure. The Council chamber erupted in multilingual debate, species communicating in light patterns, gravitic pulses, and a dozen verbal languages. But unlike before, the tone wasn't dismissive. The debate was serious, engaged, considering the human proposal on its merits. The Council chair raised a graceful limb for silence. The Council will consider both approaches before voting. His ancient eyes focused on Martinez. Humanity has earned the right to be heard. As Martinez returned to her seat, she exchanged glances with Rodriguez and Adebayo, now official advisors to the human delegation. The humans hadn't simply fixed a broken junction. They'd begun to change how the galaxy approached problems. Across the chamber, the Mirari observer clicked his mandibles in the expression "is species used for approval." The galaxy was evolving, just like the junction had. And the cosmic newcomers were helping guide that transformation, not because they possessed superior technology or ancient wisdom, but because they approached the universe with fresh eyes unclouded by certainty.